The summons came without warning. I had been in the lab fine-tuning a new sensor array when Clara Whitmore's assistant appeared at the door and told me the board required my presence. My heart sank even before I stepped into that sterile, glass-walled boardroom. The air inside was sharp with tension, the kind that presses down on your chest before anyone speaks. Clara sat at the head of the table, immaculate in her navy suit, lips curled in that rehearsed smile that never reached her eyes. Beside her was Evelyn Rhodes, the woman who had once believed in me more than anyone, the mentor who had pushed me past every doubt. Now she studied the polished table as though it held answers she could not give. Clara leaned forward. Her voice was soft, meant only for me, but each word cut deeper than a shout. Say goodbye to your career? The room blurred. Years of my life, nights without sleep, the promise I had made to Iris gone with that single whisper. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but the board members wouldn't meet my eyes. Security was already waiting by the door, a silent verdict. Evelyn shifted in her chair but never looked up. That betrayal hurt more than Clara's words. They gave me the customary cardboard box. I filled it numbly, a framed photo of Iris and me on the day she first flexed her prosthetic hand. The tiny cactus that had stubbornly survived every all-nighter. The notebook crammed with sketches that had once been nothing more than dreams. As the guards walked me through the corridor, heads turned away. My badge had already been deactivated, at least. It should have been out of instinct. I brushed it against the sensor of the restricted lab door. The light blinked green. The door clicked open. I froze, then kept walking before anyone noticed, my pulse hammering with confusion. Outside, in the cold bite of Manhattan air, I sat on the concrete steps clutching the box. Something rattled inside. Beneath the cactus lay a small USB drive I had never owned. My fingers tightened around it. Later, in my apartment. I slid it into my laptop. Corrupted files filled the screen testing logs, sensor arrays, red warnings overwritten with false approvals. My stomach twisted. I hadn't just been pushed out for profit. Someone inside wanted me to know safety itself was being erased, and someone, hidden in the shadows of the company I built, wanted me to fight back. The promise I made to Iris echoed in my mind as the screen flickered with data that should not exist, carrying me back to the beginning. The flickering files on my laptop dragged me backward, farther than I wanted to go. I could still hear the screech of metal from the night Iris's world changed. She was only 16 when the drunk driver clipped her side of the car, and by the time I reached the hospital, she was pale, trembling, and missing her right arm. The prosthetic they fitted her with months later was a cruel joke. It was clunky, heavy, and cost more than my parents' savings combined. Insurance covered half, and the rest left my family drowning in debt. Watching her struggle to lift a glass of water with that plastic claw ignited something in me. I was a graduate engineering student with no roadmap, but that night I whispered to her, "I'll build you something better, something that feels like you again." Professors laughed, classmates shook their heads, but Evelyn Rhodes, my biomechanics advisor, didn't. She pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "The industry needs someone stubborn enough to break it. Maybe that's you." With her guidance, I won a research grant. With that money, I rented a cramped apartment lab and began soldering, programming, and failing more times than I can count. It was Iris who first wore the prototype that finally worked. When her new hand curled around a braid of her own hair, tears spilled down both our faces. That moment built my conviction into stone. Years later, Evelyn helped me bring Clara Whitmore aboard. Clara was sharp, efficient, able to turn chaos into supply chains and distribution. Together, we founded Neuromotion, Orders came from hospitals across the country, then from overseas. In less than a decade, our valuation soared to $3 billion. Yet through all the applause, I never forgot the promise. On my desk sat Iris's letter, scrawled in uneven handwriting. "You gave me back my hand, don't let them take that from others." I would read it whenever investors pressed for higher margins. I would hold it whenever the board questioned my insistence on low pricing. That letter was my anchor, and it was what made their betrayal cut deeper than profit alone. The USB glowed faintly on my desk as I leaned back, remembering how quickly promises can be turned into weapons when the people closest to you decide they are expendable. The first cracks appeared in a quarterly meeting where the numbers looked strong, but the appetite of investors looked stronger. Clara leaned back in her chair, clicking through a polished presentation. "We're leaving billions untapped. A tiered pricing model solves this. Basic units remain, but stripped to essentials. Premium models capture the real profits." I stared at her slides in disbelief. The essentials she wanted to strip out were exactly what made our devices life-changing: grip sensitivity, durability, natural range of motion. "You're suggesting we take away what works and resell it at 8 times the price." Her smile was ice. "It's called segmentation. Those who can afford more will pay more. Those who can't will still have something." I turned to Evelyn, expecting her to shut it down. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Celine, markets evolve. We can't anchor the company to idealism forever." My pulse thundered in my ears. I pulled out letters from patients, handwritten thank yous from parents who had watched their children tie their shoes again, from soldiers who had climbed stairs unaided. These people are not market segments. They're the reason we exist. Profit cannot come before purpose, but the board's faces were already settled into neutrality. The vote took less than 5 minutes. My voice cracked as I protested, but their decision was final. By Tuesday, I was no longer CEO. That night, alone in my apartment, I refreshed news articles until my vision blurred. The story was already spinning strategic leadership transition to unlock revenue growth. My inbox filled with messages of sympathy and anger. I was staring at Iris's letter when a new email appeared. "Sender untraceable." You don't understand. It's not just greed safety standards are being erased. Attached were fragments of testing data. Failure rates spiking, actuators breaking down at a fraction of their required cycles, sensors degrading after weeks instead of years. My chest tightened as the numbers scrolled across the screen. This wasn't only about betrayal, it was about danger. They weren't just stealing my company, they were risking lives. The USB on my desk seemed heavier now, glowing faintly beside the open laptop as my phone began to vibrate. The days that followed blurred into a haze of silence. My Brooklyn apartment felt smaller than ever, its walls closing in as I scrolled through article after article praising the bold restructuring at Neuromotion. Commentators called it visionary. Investors applauded Clara's strategic clarity. My name was reduced to a footnote, a relic of a founder too stubborn to adapt. Then came the messages from families. One mother wrote, "We saved for years to get our daughter your arm. Now the new pricing puts it out of reach." Another said, "My clinic can no longer afford to order your prosthetics for low-income patients." Each email carved at me until I felt hollow. I had created something to give people dignity, and now it was being twisted into a luxury. One night, long after midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Celine." "It's Ben." I froze. Benicio Calderon had been in quality assurance from the start, a man who tested every joint until it broke, who cared about precision like it was a religion. His voice was hushed, trembling at the edges. They're cutting corners. Clara ordered us to falsify data. The new actuators. They're failing at 60% of the required cycles. My throat tightened. Do you have proof I can't just send you the reports? NDA. Surveillance, it's risky. But I'm not alone. There are others. We're collecting what we can. The line crackled with his hesitation. Then he whispered, check the USB. I looked toward the desk where the small drive lay beside my cactus. After we hung up, I slid it into my laptop again. This time, I noticed the metadata signatures, the meticulous coding shorthand only Ben used in his reports. My chest clenched as realization hit. He had planted it in my box before security escorted me out. The betrayal of Clara and Evelyn burned, but in the shadows of their greed, a thread of hope flickered. If Ben and others were risking everything to warn me, perhaps the fight wasn't over. The phone on my nightstand lit up again, this time with another unknown number. The diner in Queens was nearly empty when I slid into the corner booth across from Ben. He looked thinner than I remembered, his dark eyes scanning the room before he leaned in. Between us, the smell of burnt coffee clung to the air. They're planning something big, he said, voice low. Next month. Clara's hosting an international showcase in D.C. Ministers from 20 countries. She wants to secure contracts that would lock in premium pricing worldwide. I stirred my untouched tea, heat rising in my chest. If those deals closed, access would vanish for millions. That's when we expose them, I said. Ben shook his head. You'll need more than data. They'll claim it's incomplete, misinterpreted. You need something undeniable. I knew exactly what that meant. Proof the world could see with their own eyes. That night, I started making calls. Maya was the first to answer. She had lost her arm in a factory accident and had been one of our earliest recipients. If it helps others, she said without hesitation, I'll do it. Leo, a veteran who had learned to walk again with one of my prosthetic legs, needed less convincing. They gave me my life back. He told me, if they're betraying that promise, I want in. Camille was hardest to reach, a concert pianist whose career had been saved by our hand design. She paused a long time before replying. If my music can show the truth, I'll stand with you. We rehearsed in Secret Space's community centers, borrowed studios, Maya's garage. They practiced switching between my original models and the downgraded devices Ben had smuggled out. Each comparison was painful to watch, proof of how much had been stolen. Some nights, fear clawed at me. If Clara discovered our plan, we could all be crushed legally, financially, personally. But standing on a Manhattan rooftop one evening, the skyline burning gold, I pulled Iris's photo from my wallet. This time, I whispered, I won't just defend my name. I'll defend every patient. Below me, the city pulsed with light, as if it, too, was waiting for the moment to come. The cavernous expo hall in D.C. smelled faintly of fresh paint and nerves. I arrived before dawn, a borrowed badge swinging from my neck, the word consultant printed across it. Security barely glanced at me. Most of them still remembered me from past events. I walked straight to the stage where Clara's gleaming displays stood like monuments to deceit. My hands shook as I adjusted a prosthetic arm on its pedestal, checking the calibration, ensuring the contrast between their version and mine would be undeniable. The doors opened behind me. Heels clicked across the floor. Clara's voice sliced through the quiet. What are you doing here? I turned slowly, meeting her sharp gaze. Evelyn hovered beside her, face pale, eyes darting. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then the larger doors swung wide and a wave of dignitaries flowed in health ministers from around the globe, their entourages trailing behind. Cameras blinked to life. Clara smoothed her jacket and pasted on her practiced smile. I cleared my throat. Before today's scheduled program, I'd like to introduce some guests. Maya stepped forward first, her prosthetic arm gleaming under the lights. She lifted a heavy case of files with effortless grace. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Leo followed, climbing the stage stairs with the steady stride of the leg we had perfected together. Camille approached the piano, placed stage right, her original hand striking chords that filled the hall with rich, fluid sound. Then we swapped them into Clara's so-called premium models. The difference was immediate. Maya struggled to grip a pen. Leo's steps faltered on the stairs, the joint locking awkwardly. Camille's music fractured into jarring notes, her fingers hesitating as the device lagged. Ministers leaned toward each other, whispering furiously, and then Ben appeared, tablet in hand, voice steady though his face was pale. "These failures aren't anomalies," he said, projecting archived test data onto the giant screen. Rows of falsified pass rates flashed before everyone's eyes. Management ignored catastrophic safety issues. The room erupted shouts in multiple languages, cameras zooming in, questions hurled at Clara. Within minutes, delegations announced suspensions of pending contracts. Billions evaporated in the space of heartbeats. Clara's smile shattered as the cameras locked on her, capturing her undoing for the world to see. And I stood at the edge of the stage, knowing this was only the beginning of the fight. The fallout was faster than even I had imagined. Within a week of the demonstration, Neuromotion's stock price collapsed by 60%. Headlines screamed of betrayal, and class action suits piled up so quickly that even the most aggressive corporate lawyers could barely keep pace. The FDA announced immediate investigations. Countries that had once welcomed our devices now suspended imports entirely. Evelyn Rhodes submitted her resignation in a short, trembling statement. She claimed health reasons, but everyone knew it was shame. Clara, however, was defiant. She went on national television, her jaw tight, accusing me of sabotage. Selene Hartman orchestrated a stunt to discredit this company. She declared she endangered contracts worth billions. Watching her twist the narrative was almost laughable, except for the fact that some people believed her. One evening, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number from the company's headquarters. When I answered, the board chairman's voice filled the line. "Selene, we need you. Only you can stabilize us." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. After throwing me out, now they begged for rescue. I didn't give an answer. Instead, I called Iris. Her voice steadied me as it always had. "You're asking the wrong question," she said gently. "Don't ask what you must do for them. Ask what you could do with them." Her words circled my mind as I read through the board's proposal the next morning. They didn't want me as CEO. Again, they wanted a symbol, a figurehead to reassure regulators, to distract the press, to buy time. I closed the folder and felt clarity sharpen inside me. If they wanted me back, they would get me back, but on my terms. When I finally returned their call, my voice was steady. "I'll lead again." I said, "Only if the company is restructured as a public benefit corporation. Accessibility enshrined in law. No golden parachutes. Patient advocates on the board." Silence crackled on the other end. I knew the weight of what I had just demanded, and I knew they had no one else left. The boardroom was quieter than I had ever known it. My list of conditions sat on the polished oak table like a lit fuse. Cap executive pay. Reinvest 60% of profits into access initiatives. Appoint patients to half the board seats. A permanent conversion to a public benefit corporation. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one by one, heads nodded. Desperation stripped them of their pride. "We accept," the chairman finally said, voice hoarse. I had my terms in writing before I left the building that day. By week's end, the press release announced my return as CEO under the new structure. Investors panicked, but regulators praised the move. For the first time in months, I felt a thin thread of stability. That evening, as I organized my office, Clara appeared in the doorway. Her poise was unbroken, but her eyes held a trace of unease. "Celine," she began smoothly, "you know my expertise. The company will need someone who understands operations during this transition. Let me help." I opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of letters. I placed them on the desk between us. A boy's leg locked during a school fire drill. A surgeon's prosthetic hand seized mid-operation. Families trusted us, and your shortcuts betrayed them. Clara's lips parted as if to protest, but no words came. She looked at the letters, then at me. People make mistakes under pressure. Not now. I cut in. Not ever. Her mask cracked, the slightest tremor running through her voice. She left without another word. Later that night, a knock startled me. Evelyn stood in the corridor, older somehow. Her shoulders bowed. She handed me a folder thick with emails. "Everything," she whispered. "Proof of the falsified tests. I was wrong. Celine, I want to help you finish this right." I held the folder, heavy with betrayal and possibility, as the weight of what lay ahead settled over me. The lawsuits multiplied until they threatened to suffocate us. Every week brought new filings, new plaintiffs, new stories of failures that had shattered lives. Our lawyers warned that the class actions alone could drag us into bankruptcy within a year. The board begged me for a solution that would end the bleeding. I walked into the meeting with a proposal that stunned them into silence. "A victim compensation fund," I said. $200 million. Every defective unit replaced free of charge. Medical monitoring for anyone harmed. And we will not use company cash to pay for it. The room erupted in confusion. Then how someone demanded, "By suing those responsible," I said evenly. "Clara and Evelyn breached their fiduciary duty. We have proof emails, test data, falsified approvals. They pay back every dollar they took while cutting corners." Clara's chair screeched as she bolted upright. "This is outrageous. You can't pin this all on me." I slid Evelyn's folder across the table. Pages of damning emails spilled out. Clara's name appeared again and again, instructing staff to adjust test parameters, assuring investors that margins would rise through supply chain optimizations. The evidence was irrefutable. Evelyn, seated at the far end, didn't argue. "I'll return what I took," she said quietly. "All of it. My severance, my stock. I can't undo what I did, but I won't fight you." Clara fought until the lawyers confirmed she had no path to victory. In the end, she surrendered her stock options worth $40 million. The settlement was announced the next day. But in that moment of triumph, another truth surfaced. Andre, our chairman, sat stone-faced through the vote. When I pressed him afterward, his eyes faltered. He had known about the falsified reports, known and chosen silence. He cast his vote in favor of the fund not out of conviction, but survival. The fund saved the company from collapse, but as I left the boardroom, I realized money could not buy back what had been broken. Trust, once fractured, would take something far more costly to restore. Months passed, and the hum of machines in our Newark facility became a steady rhythm of renewal. Engineers worked double shifts, not out of obligation, but out of belief. Production lines turned out prosthetics that met our original standards stronger now, safer, built with lessons etched in every circuit. Morale, once fractured, began to heal as employees saw themselves once again as part of something worth building. Partnerships that had gone silent returned with cautious optimism. When the Pan American Health Alliance signed a historic contract after reviewing our reforms, I felt the tide shift for good. 50,000 units in the first order, with an expansion clause that could quadruple that number. It wasn't just revenue, it was reach tens of thousands of lives restored. At our final company-wide meeting of the year, I stood in the main auditorium, faces from Newark to Sao Paulo to Nairobi on the video screens behind me. Every defective prosthetic has been replaced. The Victim Fund is fully operational. Our governance reforms are permanent. We exist now as a public benefit corporation by law. Our mission is binding. Applause thundered, echoing like a heartbeat. Then I clicked the next slide. A resume appeared on the screen, name redacted. The qualifications were impressive, the experience undeniable. Murmurs spread as people recognized the pattern. At the bottom, a line read, "I believe I could help this company during its rebuilding." I let the silence hold. Then I said, "Some breaches of trust cannot be repaired. This application is declined." Relief rippled through the room. The slide went black. That night, Iris called. Her voice carried the warmth of everything I had fought for. "The girl I've been mentoring tied her shoes today with one of your new prosthetics." Tears blurred my vision as I smiled. 8 years ago. I promised Iris that no one would be left behind. They tried to erase that promise, but promises built on love don't die. They endure, fireproof and unbroken, no matter who tries to burn them away.